special episode where we will be talking to Brian about stillness. At Akashic Resources, our mission, our purpose is to help you use your whole mind to be happier, healthier, and
more successful,
more productive. And today's episode, of course, is about stillness, something that I personally have been really trying to cultivate. It is not one of my strengths. However, I'm really committed to developing stillness. As we know, our thoughts create our life, and as we practice something, we become it. And I had something very profound happen a couple of weeks ago in a workshop that I attended, where the Amber Ryan taught about practicing stillness. And I asked her, how do you get into that still state? And she was like, well, you practice. So yeah, so you practice. So I've noticed Brian really practice this and be really good at it. For example, when the kids are getting really upset, or just in general, he can hold a still mind. When I've done meditations with him, I tend to experience a lot deeper meditations with him. So, and I think some of his readings have alluded to the fact that he's really cultivated stillness in other lifetimes. So I thought, perfect, let's learn together. Let's ask him some questions and let's go a little bit deeper on this topic of stillness. So Brian, welcome to your own podcast.
Well, it's wonderful to be here.
Thank you for being a guest on your podcast. And so tell me, what is your journey into stillness? How did you come about even wanting to learn to meditate or wanting to be still, or were you always this way?
Oh, no,
I guess.
No, not really. Okay, so in 07, actually in 06, a voice in my head said, you should take yoga. So I ignored it for 6 months, right? And I didn't even know anybody that did yoga. I started doing yoga. 9 months later, through a series of very strange coincidences, I ended up at a school of metaphysics and began classes. And I was on anxiety medication. So I was not an example of stillness. In fact, my doctor basically twisted my arm and gave me the medication for free because he said he was concerned about me. Because I said, I don't want your medication. I don't, even before I got into this stuff.
You weren't very still with your doctor.
He said I wasn't type A, I was type AAA. And I was actually building 5 brand new houses at once. And I was the general contractor, and I did a lot of the work too. And that was probably too much. But that's always kind of been my MO, is doing too much and thinking too much and all that stuff. So I got into this metaphysical school and I started to do these attention concentration exercises, started to become aware of the ridiculous amount of thoughts that were going on up here. Within 30 days of doing these exercises, I told my doctor that I was coming off the anxiety medication. And I did, and I never took it again. That was 07, so it was 16 years. So I didn't start at a place of stillness. Now, I did probably awaken some past life understandings, but what I'm saying to you is that wherever you are right now, and where I was in 07 was a place of not much stillness, but I had a desire for that, and I had a need. So I practiced and I studied.
So question on that, because I think I know for me, when I first started practicing candle concentration exercises, and I'm actually doing it again, and it's been very helpful. It was very excruciating just to sit for even a few minutes. And so for a lot of people, just the idea of stillness itself is actually not very, it's not very appealing. And it can even feel overwhelming, or they might say, I don't have time. I don't have time
for stillness, right?
So how do you have enough grace with yourself to just practice anyway, even when, at first when you started, for example, when it was really challenging, what kept you going, or how did you keep moving towards that goal?
It's great question. And yeah, for me, I'm very practical. I'm a Capricorn, and if I don't see benefits, then I'm not going to do anything, right? So I guess I'm kind of selfish, if I don't get a return on my investment, I'm not going to make the investment. So I knew that I wanted to be calmer. I knew that I didn't want to experience as much of this anxiety. And what I learned was anxiety was scattered attention. So as I started to focus my attention, as I started to concentrate, started to do different things, breathing techniques. These are some free tips right here. So breathing, what do people say when you get upset? Whoa, take a deep breath, right? Because that helps calm the nervous system. It helps direct the attention. Now your attention's on your breath. So whatever you were OCDing about, now your attention's off of that for a brief second so that you can take a deep breath. So that is a wonderful, wonderful practice right there in the moment. The other is just ask yourself, where is my attention? Okay. And then you can ask yourself, is my attention on something that I want, or is it on something that I don't want? So when we put our attention on something that we don't want, something that we're afraid of, something, some false reality, or we're using visualization to visualize all the worst things, the worst possible outcomes that never happen, right? Then what happens? Our anxiety goes up and the mind starts to get agitated. So there's a lot of different things that we can do, but that taking a deep breath, focusing your attention. Another thing is asking yourself, is this true? Is a really, really good way to kind of calm yourself down and create a little objectivity in your mind.
So what about, thank you, that's helpful, is just sounds like what I hear you saying is just merely putting your attention from one thing to another, or just becoming aware of where your attention is in itself creates stillness. I also know, I know it's true for me, and I'm sure it's true for a lot of people, is when I have a lot of thoughts, it's actually hard. It's like there's so many thoughts. And I used to think that I had to get rid of all of them to be still. So what can you tell us about what stillness actually is? Is it really just no thought? Or can we practice stillness while still having thoughts?
Yeah. And that's the beauty of this, is the benefit is during the day. So you might, practice meditation. Meditation is a great way to cultivate stillness, concentration exercises, attention exercise, breathing exercise. So then, but when you get up, even yoga is a great way to, practice this dance. Ecstatic dance might be a really good way to do that. There's all different types of activities that we can practice, but when they're over, it's carrying that stillness with you throughout the day. And the benefits are just extraordinary. Number one, you can, physically, when you take your body out of fight or flight, now you have energy that you can put towards other things like healing yourself. So if you have anything in your body at all that needs to be repaired, and I would imagine almost everybody does, if you can calm yourself down, then more energy is going to go into the necessary functions of the body. But it's also useful, say, like, well, you brought up parenting. I don't know how many of you are parents, but our children and most children will take you to new levels of anxiety, of frustration, anger. It's like, it is an accelerated spiritual exercise. That's for sure. Being a parent. So that's a huge benefit right there. So when we lose control with our children, it tends to get pretty ugly, right? And so the kids are like this, right? They're up and down, up and down. So if you can stay calm while they're freaking out, that'll help bring them down. Now, what about relationships, right? The relationships are challenging. There's no doubt about it. So for most of us, when we're in a committed relationship, we would like to have that calmness. We would like to have that stillness. So again, sometimes our partner's up and we're, if we can stay still when our partner's agitated, then that's going to help calm it. It's going to help calm them down, right? But if we both get agitated, then it's not going to be the best, right? Yeah, it can be unproductive.
So what do you recommend? I know, again, just speaking for everyone and myself as well, is the challenge that I find, the biggest challenge, and still a question in my mind. If I say, okay, it's time for me to practice the candle concentration, I'm going to go be still. I can do it. I can practice stillness, and I can actually find moments of complete stillness even after years of practice. Same with meditation. I can find stillness in meditation. Great. I've got that, and some people are still working on that step. But how do you transition from it being like you were saying, how do you take it from it being the exercise or the meditation into what we call living meditatively? How do you do that in the midst of chaos? How do you trigger yourself to bring in stillness at times where it seems like, I guess that's what self-control is, but what is the actual mechanism? Because I've seen you do it where there's chaos happening all around you, but somehow you're able to not get affected by it
Hmm.
and actually bring in stillness. Is there something people can practice throughout is it a practice too?
It is a
Okay.
practice, and
So what
there's
is that?
so many. Yeah, I mean, practice is just doing it over and over again. So if you do, if you do the breathing exercises over and over, do them on a regular basis, and that's going to affect your abilities. If you do the concentration exercise, if you do it over and over again, you practice, and what this looks like in your life. So I was thinking about it the other day. So I used to race stock cars. I raced dirt track. I raced Mustangs for several years. Loved it. Oh man, there's nothing more exhilarating, right? Nothing more exciting than driving around a racetrack, smashing into other people, going as fast as you can, right? I mean, that's what is that? Is that not most guys' dream? That was my dream anyway.
Sounds a
And
little scary to
it's
me.
very expensive. But so I'm getting ready to go out on the track, and all these cars are parked there. There's another race going on, and when that race ends, then they let us out on the track, and I'm surrounded by, it was almost all guys, and they're just the testosterone and it's just going through the roof, and they're revving their engines up. We're not going anywhere for 5 minutes, and these guys are just going revving their engines up, and I can feel right the excitement and the anxiety, and it's just going like this. So this is way before I discovered metaphysics. I would do these deep breathing exercises in my car. The motor's running, I'm all strapped in, I got my helmet on, my neck brace, my fireproof suit, and I would do these deep breathing exercises
Keep yourself
and visualizations so that I could stay calm. Because some of these people would actually go so fast, they'd fly off the track on the corners. It was a small track. We didn't have walls on the corners. We only had walls on the straightaway where the stands were. And people would literally just fly off the track and crash. And I realized myself, I didn't fly off the track, but if I was too excited, I would go into the corner too hot, too deep, too fast, and I would slide up and lose a position. And it was so easy to do. And I really cultivated this calmness so that I could be a better race car driver. And then, through all different types of situations, I started to see these benefits.
I guess I just want to dig in a little bit further. Even that, there was a moment, they say the distance between the stimulus and the response, where you were starting to feel yourself go, and then you made a choice to actually calm yourself down.
Yeah.
Where I know for me, and again, speaking for a lot of people, that choice is to do the opposite. Like there's something that triggers and you actually get more anxious, and then you kind of
Yeah.
lose. What is that? What is that mechanism that people can access? Is it when you practice meditate? Like, is it because you have the inner practice?
I guess and there's two things that we know from metaphysics. So you get down to it. We were from God. We were given existence and free will, which is choice. And we have a choice. In every moment, there's an infinite number of choices that we can make. And I guess I've always been in touch with that in some capacity before I ever studied this stuff, is that I always knew that I could make a choice that would lead to a different outcome. So then I look at, okay, what outcome do I want? So in this example, I wanted to win the race. I wanted to finish well and do my best. So I think for me, and I've been over the course of my life a fairly competitive person, and I set high goals and high standards for myself. So I think a lot of my motivation is just in the moment, is like, how can I be my best? In fact, that's why I signed up for metaphysical classes.
You want to be
is they were, they painted this picture of you could have greater control over your mind, and you can be a manifester and a better creator. And that was very attractive to me. Being my best has always been something that I'm willing to invest in for personal development. That was a long time ago. I said, I don't want to waste money on frivolous things, but if it's exercise equipment that I'm actually going to use, if it's a personal development, then from an early age, I was willing to invest in that, to the point where I paid for my own school. I paid for college. I actually paid for high school. I paid for a private high school. I paid for college. I paid for my MBA program. I paid for that myself because I was willing to invest in being better. So that's kind of.
So this stimulates me to
Mhm.
think, yes, you had this healthy sense of I want to be better. And it also sounds like, I know in that time, that example, you weren't really practicing, but now, because you do have a practice, would you say that you can kind of lean on your practice? Is that your ally? Meaning, because you have a meditation practice and you practice stillness throughout the day, when things start to get real crazy, you can go to that candle, or you can
Yeah,
go,
I
is that
think
accurate?
you build
The inner state,
you
maybe?
well, I think I'm trying to think of how do you
Because that's the
like
big
anything, it's
question.
like building a muscle, but it's an inner muscle that you can't see. But the more you practice anything, the easier it gets, the better it gets, the closer it is for you to grab and use.
The reason I ask this,
Mhm.
just for everyone, is because you know, it's kind of like the concept the rich get richer and the poor
Yeah,
get poor.
yeah,
It's the same thing. It's like someone that already has a good sense of self-esteem and like desires good for themselves, they're more likely to make good choices. Someone
right.
that has maybe like a lower self-esteem or doesn't think highly of themselves, it's a
Mhm.
little bit harder for them to make good choices. So in this podcast, I'm just trying to help everyone, the person that's like, yeah, stillness, I need that. I'm gonna go for it, and the one that's like, "Ah, that sounds great, but I just don't see it in myself." And it's like, how do you help everyone? It sounds like the universal is choice, is what I hear you
Well,
saying, that we all
yeah,
have a choice at
yeah,
the end of the day. Even if we think we don't have a choice, we
yeah.
do. Would that be
Well,
accurate?
yeah, we always have a choice. I think possibly it's deciding what you want. What do you want, and are you willing to put forth the work to get there? And for me, I'll be honest with you. In the last, so we graduated from the School of Metaphysics in 2016 and came out into the world, got full-time jobs, and now we have kids. And we got really back into the fast pace of society. And for 9 years, I had been in a slower kind of a situation, and I practiced a lot of. I would do an hour or two per day worth of spiritual exercises, concentration. I would meditate twice a day for, I mean, sometimes I'd do 3 hours. I mean, it was, and now I find it very difficult to do that. And looking for that
The
balance.
balance.
However, having kids has kind of raised the bar on my desire to be my best. And there's a need. I recognized in myself a need to stay calm, because when everybody's freaking out, it's really good, for one person to try to bring that energy down. Because if everybody starts freaking out, it gets really, really crazy. So I love analogies because they help us to see things. So in the way that we interpret dreams, water represents your conscious life experiences. And when those get kind of rough, right? The waves get rough, it gets more difficult to guide the boat, right? If you're the captain of the ship. But when the waves get really, really, really rough, the captain of the ship has to stay very, very calm. Now, you can see if the crew's getting excited and the crew's like, are we going to live through this? The captain's got to be really, really, really calm. And that's a good thing. So I looked at our ship, and I looked at the crew, and I said, we need to bring this energy down. We're a high energy family.
Well, speaking of that, I'm hearing footsteps and my heart rate is going up
It is.
because I don't want the podcast to get interrupted. And I can feel myself stillness and what? And
Yeah.
my mind's going really fast all of
Yeah.
a sudden. I
Yeah.
find myself, and it's like
Yeah.
in the moment, I have an opportunity to take a deep breath and trust and still my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your still mind experiences that you've had.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I went to they at this School of Metaphysics, they offered these still mind weekends. Unfortunately, they don't do that anymore. We have a still mind. We're actually doing a silent meditation retreat here coming up in April, and it's patterned after those still mind retreats that they don't do anymore. I did 9 years in a row.
Did you?
I
Wow, I
love
only
I
went to
love
one, and I thought that was an accomplishment.
I love that. I love that. As much as I love to talk, honestly, I'm fine. I went
Well,
camping one time 2 weeks by myself and didn't see anybody for like 8 days. It was incredible.
that actually, that in itself is proof because I went to one, it was great.
Mm.
Actually, I went to two, I guess, if you count the 1 day experience, and it was great. And I really wish I could go to more. You've gone to 9.
Mhm.
So that might be part of why you're better at stillness
And
than
then
me.
I took a special still mind class that was once a month for, I think, I don't know if it was 6 months or 9 months, something like
But what
that.
I'm
And we did 2 hour open-eyed meditations. And if you think that you are a good meditator, try doing open-eyed meditation. And you're talking about experiences. So we had, it was a small class, maybe 10 students in this class. And people would literally fall off their chairs and pass out. And in the first couple of experiences, 2 hours of open-eyed meditation.
talk about psychedelic.
I thought I was going insane. I mean, my mind was just going crazy, and my conscious mind was saying, "You can't do this. You're hurting yourself. This is painful." And it was brutal. It was brutal. But that's the practice.
That's what I was gonna say, is that that's proof in the pudding of
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
because you had more practice.
Sorry.
It's okay, because you've had more practice, then you have more access to it because you've practiced it more. So
Mm.
yeah, tell us a little bit about those. I mean, one of them was that you felt like you were going insane, but what about some other? I've had experiences myself of like it feels psychedelic in that
Mm.
I go into this state of trance almost.
Yeah.
So what was some of those like for you?
Yeah, I've actually on several occasions gone into a breathless state, and I didn't. The first time that it happened, I wasn't aware of it, and I actually had. It was in a group meditation, and the meditation had ended, and I was still in a deep, deep sort of meditative trance, and there were several people around me, and they were, and when I came out of it, I did like a convulsing kind of like this, and they were everybody was staring at, or there was like 3 people maybe that were staring at me, and I was like, what is it? And they were like, you weren't breathing, and I was like, really? And that was kind of my first experience of that, and I've had several experiences since, but it it's the practice, and I think one thing I read this somewhere. This is not my own thought, but again, I love analogy. So in meditation in particular, seeing your thoughts as clouds that are going by, and then it's okay to observe the clouds, but don't interact with the thoughts. So a real good example that is true to my life. I where I was living when I first started practicing this stuff. I had a neighbor who had a son who had a car that was not in all that good a shape, and it was very, very loud. And I was meditating, and he drove by, and I heard the muffler must have been broken or something, and I found myself going, I should talk to them about that guy that I know that fixes those mufflers really cheap, that I actually learned about through the race car driving. And and then I realized that I had grabbed the thought. And then a few days later, I was meditating, and the car went by, and I was observing the hearing the car, and I was like, I didn't grab the thought. I didn't follow it. I didn't engage the thought, if that makes sense. And that's part of stillness. Is I've heard it described as creating space between the thoughts. But if you think about water, you want to get that water calm, because when the water is really calm, it's smooth sailing.
So that's the question. I think that's a big one. Because before you got to a point where you're like, now I'm in the state of stillness, what was happening in your mind? And what did you do to get your water to calm? What do you do to calm it?
So my early meditations, I went from being extremely anxious with lots of thoughts that were, negative, fearful, thinking about things I did not want. And I think the next step was I started to notice um, more productive thoughts. So I was still thinking, but I was having realizations, maybe small realizations, or things that I needed to remember would pop into my head. And it was because I had created the space. So if you think of it like noise, so the noise of these negative thoughts was not allowing me to be aware of the higher quality thoughts. So as I got rid of the noisy thoughts, then I was left with higher quality thoughts. And I remember one of my teachers telling me, well, because I was excited, being a Capricorn with an MBA that's, likes production and efficiency, I was excited. I said, I'm meditating, and when I get done, I'm writing 2 or 3 pages worth of stuff. And he was like, well, maybe it's not, maybe it's not about production. So my next stage,
Like, back to the drawing board.
but it was progress, right? It was, I saw the progress and I was excited by this progress. So the next stage was just not engaging. So again, even if it is an amazing thought, don't engage it. Just receive it. It'll come back. You'll get a chance to write that down. You've received the thought now. You're conscious of the thought. So again, just creating the space. And I'm remembering something that I did. You remember those old cartoons where the like Tom and Jerry, and the mouse hole was that little arch that was perfectly carved into the base trim of the wall, And so I had this practice for a while of staring at that mouse hole in my mind, waiting for the next thought and looking, observing.
And then what would you do when the thought would come?
I would just observe it.
So you'd observe
But
it.
there was space between the thoughts because I was looking, what will be the next thought? And then I was in this space of receptivity, of waiting.
What's the difference between observing a thought and engaging?
Engaging a thought is an aggressive activity, and receiving thoughts is a receptive activity. So it's like meditation. So meditation, the first part of meditation, the way that we've learned it, and a lot of techniques are similar, is you have some breathing, and then a lot of times you set your intention or you have a prayer. That's all aggressive. That's all aggressive. And then usually with like an out breath or some sort of a release of the prayer, release of the intention, we go into a state of receptivity. And that's what meditation is. Meditation is a receptive. So it's a non-thinking, because thinking, for the most part, is aggressive. Like I said, we can receive thoughts from outside of ourselves. We can receive thoughts from God. We can receive thoughts from our higher self, from our subconscious mind, etc. And that's part of where those higher quality thoughts come from, and those realizations. And again, that's a wonderful thing, but then it's aggressive to engage that while you're in meditation. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's one of those things, we can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but once you practice, it's the practice. Once again,
practice.
You can't get around the practice.
Yep, practice.
So would you like to lead us through an example of meditating, or do you have anything else that you'd like to discuss about stillness? I think it's kind of challenging to have a podcast on stillness because it's more of a practice, right? Like you kind of have to practice stillness.
Yes.
Not necessarily talk about it.
Well, yeah, we'll do a little bit of a meditation here. And before I do that, I want to say I just got hired as a meditation teacher.
That's right.
A yoga.
That is right. Very exciting. Evolve Yoga Lounge.
Yeah, and during the interview, the owner was asking me, she said, so what is your practice? What do you do? And I've done a variety of different meditations, and I've come back to this thought, and it's related to when you go to bed, you want to go to bed consciously. You want to change your clothes out of your day clothes, put on your night clothes, and get into bed. It's not beneficial. It's not healthy.
Because you're dragging the day into the bed, yeah.
To fall asleep in front of the television and then wake up and then drag yourself to bed. It's not productive to do that. It's not productive to lay in bed on your phone until you fall asleep. It's not a conscious thing, it's an unconscious action. So we want to do something consciously.
Gotcha.
So I've experimented with just free form meditation, and I've found that I have more thoughts and I have less stillness when I have a little bit less structure. So what I've found is the structure up front helps us to enter the state consciously, and we want to enter that meditative state consciously. I've found that very productive. So a pattern of breathing. What I like best is a 6-3-6 breathing, where you breathe in to the count of 6 through your nose, you hold for a count of 3, and then you exhale gently through your mouth to the count of 6. And then there's a slight pause, and then you start again to the count of 6. So you do that twice. And then on the third breath, to the count of 6, you tense all your muscles. So I typically have my hands in my lap, my feet flat on the floor, sitting up straight. And then so for the third and fourth 6-3-6 breathing, we tense our bodies to the in breath count of 6 through the nose, and for the hold of 3. And then as we release the tension and the breath to the count of 6 out of the mouth. And then again, for the fourth breath, again, tense for the count of 6 and for the hold 3, and then release with the count of 6. And then we come back to the breathe in, and then these last two breaths 5 and 6 are a little bit slower. So I slow the count down and breathe a little bit slower on that 6. Let's stretch it out a little bit. And that count of 3, stretch it out a little bit. And with breath, you always want to do what's comfortable. You never force the breath. It's not a forcing. It's a gentle relaxing. We're calming ourselves down. We're helping to still the body in this. So we can, if our body's not still, it's going to be difficult to still our mind as well. So we're calming the body. We're putting ourselves in a position. And then, so after that 6th exhale, that's where we do a prayer or an intention, and something simple. I like to keep it, relatively short. I like to start my prayers with something that I'm grateful for, something that I'm thankful for. I always thought there's different kinds. There's adoration prayers. There's, petition prayers. There's adoration. I said that. There's devotion. There's several different kinds of prayers. But before I start asking for something, I like to say thank you. I think that's a good way to go. So that's my particular thing, is I go through some gratitude stuff before I start saying, this I'd like this, or I'd like that, or give to somebody else.
It makes sense with the law of prosperity. You need to receive and appreciate what you have to receive more. So it's the same.
So that's kind of what has worked for me. And then I use an exhale, and then I've had images that I've used over the years of like smoke or incense rising up to heaven, carrying the prayers up. For years, I had this, I knew this guy that had pigeons, and he had some that were white. He had a flock of white pigeons that were quite expensive. And I used those as my release, because he would release those out and they would all fly off. And it was a beautiful, beautiful sight. And so I used that as an image of those white pigeons, or white doves. You could say white doves.
Letters to heaven.
And they would carry that up. But maybe having some image of that release might be beneficial for some people as well. And then at that point, that's the end of the aggressive. And so we release, and then we come into a state of quietness, a state of receptivity. And I focus my attention a little bit on my breath. Again, it's not a breathing exercise. So we don't want to just, focus on our breath, because that's not 100% meditation. However, a little bit of just a relaxing breath. And if you find yourself being caught up in thoughts, which would mean you're normal, then maybe returning your attention to your breath can help guide you down into a little bit of a deeper state. So let's go ahead. We'll do a little meditation here, and let's actually say goodbye. And people can use this. So, you want to do that? We'll say goodbye now,
Goodbye.
and then we'll.
Just kidding.
So, and then we'll do this meditation, and then we're just going to end at a certain point. And that way, if you're listening to this and you want to continue on in the meditation, you can use this as a way maybe to lead you in. So
Yeah.
so
So thank you for joining in
Yeah.
on stillness and the benefits of it. Just to wrap up before we go into this, I find that especially when you're first starting out, having someone to lead you or meditating with other people really does help. And so we have the Still Mind retreat coming up
Yeah.
that you can be a part of here in Oak Point.
April, I think it's 19th, 20th, and 21st. I
Right,
think.
2 weeks
So-
after the eclipse, so good time to integrate the eclipse energies. And if you're not joining, that's good too. We're gonna do a meditation together right now to just have an experience with
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And
so-
if you like this podcast, please like and subscribe. And if you like this particular topic, just leave a comment, let us know, so we can do more stuff like this where we're actually doing a practice with you and not just
Yeah.
talking, but also practicing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're gonna do that 6-3-6 breathing with two regular, and then two tense and release, and then two regular. Then we'll go into our prayer intention, release that, and then we'll go into the silence. I'll give a little bit of some verbal guides for this. So again, if you want to sit up straight, or if you want to get into a lotus, half lotus, or sitting on the floor cross-legged, that's a very good position. You want to get your back to where it's nice and straight. You want to keep your chin level, shoulders down and relaxed, hands comfortably in your lap, eyes closed. With your eyes closed, you can elevate your gaze about 20 degrees. Imagine looking out through your third eye as we take in a in-breath to the count of 6. Hold to the count of 3. Exhale to the count of 6. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. And now this one with tension. Release tension, release the breath. One more with tension. Hold. Exhale. Release tension, release breath. And now a little slower. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. One more. Hold. Exhale. And now, say your prayer intention. And release. Now enter quiet receptivity. If you find yourself having a thought, bring your attention back to your breath.